just as sure as Miles's love for Keiko, or maybe Keiko's love for Miles. It's Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. It must be Mission Log Live. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Ken Ray. Yes, it is Mission Log Live, the show where you, our Star Trek pals, join us, your Star Trek pals, to talk about Star Trek. Tonight, we are pleased to welcome Academy Award-winning makeup and VFX, or visual effects artist, Robert Short. He's had a hand in many versions of Star Trek, from the animated series, believe it or not, all the way to Voyager, and a number of TV and feature films along the way. We'll welcome Robert to the show in just a minute, along with your questions and comments, because yes, this is the at-home version of this game. You can join us by clicking on the Zoom meeting link, or you can use the one tap from your smartphone, or you can call us on the telephone, just the way your parents and their parents did, and their parents before them. Maybe not their parents before them, though, because phones are relatively new when you think about it. 669-900-6833 is the phone number to call, 669-900-6833. Then you punch up the meeting code, and those numbers are on the screen for your convenience. Standing by, waiting for your call, of course, is Earl Green, the inimitable Earl Green. He tried being imitable. It just didn't work out.
Oh, that's too bad. Hey, Ken, you said Star Trek pals. That made me think, who are the Star Trek pals who are watching right now? Well, I'm going to tell you. We got Cosmo checking in. We got Scott Mays. We got Carlos. We got, let's see here. We got Pam. We got Cooley. We got Dave. We got Casey, who is also saying Cooley. We've got Jeff. We've got Steve. We've got Kim, we've got Vicky. There's just so many people checking in, saying hi to us. There's Michael, there's Ian. So good to see all of our pals just saying hi. Already Carlos is saying, shakes his fist in the air at Cooley. So I'm glad this is catching on. I'm glad that this is a meme happening right here. Oh, and there's Aaron Harvey. So hi to everybody. Welcome to our Star Trek pals. And yeah, you're in for a treat tonight, because I have to tell you, there's a lot of people who know a lot of Star Trek trivia, and they might know a lot of behind the scenes people, but they may not know Robert Short's name, and they may not know just how far into Star Trek he goes. I'm going to say he's like the Forrest Gump of Star Trek. It's like you look and then, oh, look, there's Robert Short again, just showing up in Star Trek and so many other cool shows, so many other cool projects. So you guys are in for a treat. Call in. This guy has got behind the scenes stories like you would not believe.
Now, we do want to thank everybody for checking us out here live on Facebook or on YouTube, youtube.com/Roddenberryprod. You can, of course, check out the video later in both of those places. And if that's what you're doing, hey, we want to thank you again. And finally, if you're grabbing the audio-only version of this podcast, well, heck, we want to thank you too. Wherever you find us, we do want to ask two more favors. Please hit like and please hit share, because algorithms, I'm pretty sure that's the reason. Algorithms, you do that and it feeds whatever beast is telling people horrible things, except this time it's telling people good things. Like, hey, come hang out with your pals and talk about Star Trek, won't you? We talked about, I'm sorry, John.
Algorithms, he was a blues singer.
I think he started off in gospel, but then he went a little blues. And then once he went rock and country, everybody was like, yeah, I'm off that.
Yeah.
We talked last week about how convention season is over. And I realized that was very John and Ken centric, because convention season, I mean, sure, there's a season because of Comic-Con and sort of the big things that happen in the summer, but convention season just rolls on through the year. We talked last week about Dragon Con and the fact that Sue Kissenweather was going to be there. I thought you were joking when you said 20 panels for her, but she did 20 panels, 20 panels last weekend, which is insane.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And yet this is the first year that she thought, hey, I'm taking the day after off.
I don't have that much stuff to talk about. 20 panels. By panel number 8, I'd just be like, so I like drinks. Do you like drinks? That would be.
Let me run you a clip from my last panel.
All right.
And that would just be it for like the rest of the time, I think. The reason I'm bringing up, conventions and such is because there's one more immediately that you and I know about. Our good friend, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemeczek, he of the Roddenberry Podcast Network specifically, he of the Trek Files, is going to be at FanX Salt Lake, which this year They're having in Salt Lake City. Yeah, and
Crazy.
you can tell, right? So
Yeah.
get this lineup. Benedict Wong from, of course, the Marvel Universe at this point.
Mhm.
Tom Holland, formerly of the Marvel Universe. Hayden Christensen from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. A whole bunch of stars. Like they're all really small, and it's difficult to see without my glasses.
Mhm.
But then Larry Nemeczek. Larry Nemeczek is going to be there as well. So if Tom Holland wasn't enough to get you there,
Yeah,
Larry Nemeczek,
or Shattered Glass is Hayden Christensen. I mean,
I
that's
don't know that. Is that a
yeah.
thing?
Yeah,
Okay.
Shattered Glass was a movie about Stephen Glass, the reporter who just made up stuff that made it through the New York Times, and I want to say the Wall Street Journal, maybe one or the other or both. But he would just make up crazy stuff that would slip past the fact checkers, because of course they're fact checkers, they're not fraud checkers, and he would leave these weird breadcrumbs. It's a whole thing, and he's great in it. He's really
Okay.
that movie. So
Well, then if Larry Nemeczek isn't enough, Hayden Christensen.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So anyway, Fan X Salt Lake, that runs the 5th. So I guess Friday through the 7th, I guess Sunday in Salt Lake City. Check your local listings for, stuff and things. Hey, we have a poll question, John.
yes, we do. Now, last week, we asked you about a Worf series because there's so much new Star Trek happening right now, and so much new Star Trek to happen in the coming years. And of course, it was time for that evergreen discussion: should we have a Captain Worf series? Well, 69% of you said make it so. 31% of you said belay that order. I'm going to say I fall into the latter camp. Belay that order. I want to see other Star Trek. I want to see different and new Star Trek. Don't necessarily need more of Worf because, well, we've had a lot of Worf.
Yeah.
Interested to catch up with Picard, but look, doesn't mean I don't like Worf. Just saying that if I have a choice. Yeah.
Well, I find that very interesting because you could argue that the newest Star Trek you're going to get is Below Decks. Is that what it's called? Lower Decks.
Lower
Excuse
Decks.
me.
Yeah.
The cartoon.
Yeah.
Yes, because while we didn't know Michael Burnham and we didn't know the crew of Discovery, it does take place 10 years before TOS. It does do the Mirror Universe. It does Spock. It does Sarek. It does all of those people. I mean, we haven't seen new Star Trek in probably since Nemesis.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so
Sure.
but it's Worf is where you're going to draw the line.
Yeah, well, because look, Sarek total screen time, we're talking a few hours. Worf has been in like 32 seasons of TV.
That's true.
Okay,
that's true, and every movie.
Yeah,
like, even like movies that are like, "What are you doing here?" And
yeah,
like,
right, contractual obligation.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, so that was last week. See, I'm on the make it so side. If you're going to keep bringing back old characters, then why not give that one a shot? I don't necessarily want him to be Captain Worf, but I'm willing to see what's going on with Worf these days. Why not? As far as this week's poll question, and Matthew Corey, by the way, just knocking it out of the park. 2 weeks in a row that we've turned to the ether and said what would be a good poll question, and Matthew Corey has come sailing out of the ether and said, "How about this one? How did you spend your Labor Day? Were you relaxing or were you laboring?" 73% of you said you were relaxing. I envy you people. 27% said laboring. John and I were actually laboring yesterday on Labor Day. We spent Labor Day doing what the title says.
Yeah,
laboring.
That's it. Yeah, laboring, pretty much. Yeah, labor all the time. Again, thank you, Matthew Corey. Somebody get that guy a job on Mission Log because he is killing it. So thank you, Matthew, so much for that. Hey, let's say hello to our guest. Now, Robert Short, I need to give a quick word of introduction here. I'm a fan of the spy series, A Man From U.N.C.L.E. I've said that many times on Mission Log. I'm sure that people are sick of hearing about it. And one of the names in fan circles that always comes up in relation to The Man From U.N.C.L.E. is Robert Short, because he's an expert on the show. He has worked in some way on every iteration of The Man From U.N.C.L.E., even the never-produced Quentin Tarantino version. So if you want to talk about unproduced Quentin Tarantino or speculative Quentin Tarantino, he's probably the guy to talk to about that as well. And that's how I got to know him. Now, little did I realize that Bob has some very deep Star Trek roots. He worked on the maquettes and in the ink and paint department for Star Trek, the animated series. He did mask design and sculpts for Don Post Studios. He worked on special effects for Star Trek The Motion Picture. He even provided the creature design for the Voyager episode Distant Origin. And get this, it all started with a visit to the set of the original series. A little more on that later. So some of his movie credits include Cocoon, Predator, Chopping Mall, E.T., Beetlejuice, for which he won an Oscar for makeup effects. I'm leaving out so much here because this is the kind of conversation where we can just wind them up and let them go. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Robert Short. Such a pleasure to have you here.
Hi, guys. Pleasure. As they say, pleasure to be here tonight.
Well, it is certainly fantastic to have you here. Look, I feel like we kind of have to start with the big thing, which to me is this golden era of TV, late 60s. And you had told me that your sister was working as an actor, kind of, background actor sometimes, every now and then. Did she get some featured roles ever in her time in front of the camera?
No, every once in a while she would get a line, which was great, but she never really played a particular character except for MASH. MASH, she was one of the regular nurses that was like in every episode. Not that she had dialogue all the time, but she was somebody who was like always there on a weekly basis. MASH was more or less the show that she really made her presence known. On shows like THE Cat and Man From U.N.C.L.E. and things like that, she'd appear once every 5 episodes as some miscellaneous character. Whereas on MASH, even though I don't think she ever had a name per se, she was always, basically playing the same character week in and week out. So MASH, and also on it's not General Hospital, it's the Vince Edwards
Specific Hospital.
Yeah, I can't use specific gender as opposed to I can't,
well, she was doing all this work.
Chad Everett, Doctor. Yeah. So there were a few shows that she was, continued a kind of a character on, but again, like on U.N.C.L.E. or Mission Impossible, she would just be somebody who turned up in a casino.
Right. So here's you, teenage Robert Short, just hanging out. Your sister's on set, and you're just like, I'm going to go along for the ride. And I cannot imagine this happening today, where you just sort of show up and you're befriending people and ingratiating yourself on the sets of these now just iconic shows, and you're hanging out.
Yeah, well, they're worth it. Yeah, it was an interesting time, and one that you didn't really realize just how special it was going to be, or how lasting a lot of those series were going to be. Things like, my sister was a contact. I had other friends who were contacts at other studios and stuff. So I kind of was able to spread my time around the studios, and just, as you say, just to hang out on sets. So I did have a chance, at times to just hang out on the Lost in Space set, or the Sea View and the Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, and sit in the flying sub chairs and wiggle the controls around. And one of the times that I was visiting my sister on Mission Impossible, what was great is I had the ability to visit the sound stages that were next door. If you were on the Mission Impossible set, you could walk out a door, and if you turned right, you'd be kind of going toward Mod Squad, and that was a little later, but I Spy, shot a couple of doors down, and then if you turned left, you'd end up in the Enterprise, on the Star Trek set.
So I'm going to ask Earl to post this picture that you sent to me some time ago. So Earl, if you can bring that up for our audience watching tonight, a shot of you sitting in the captain's chair on the set of Star Trek on the original series. This is, it's just absolutely going to blow people's minds. This is black and white photo of you. You have some very stylish kind of white pants. You're wearing a jacket. You look like you're totally dedicated to the moment, to the scene. This is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. There's nobody else on set with you, although if you look closely, kind of at the right corner where the set ends, it looks like there's a reflection or a shadow of somebody who was standing over there. I don't know if that was who was taking the picture or whatever, but tell us about that moment. This is so cool.
I can't, it's one of those things that the photo, I had even forgotten that the photo had been taken, because as you're there and you're assimilating everything and you're watching stuff, sometimes a moment like that passes you by, and it wasn't until recently that the photo came to my attention. I was like, oh, I forgot. I mean, literally, it was one of those, I forgot all about having taken a photo in the captain's chair. But I normally would never, in that photo, I would never normally wear my windbreaker zipped up. Period. That's just not my style. But it felt like that would be the right thing to do for kind of having a Federation, a much more Federation looking outfit on for that at that particular time. So I do remember zipping up the jacket. So it's kind of like, okay, well, this will look certainly much more appropriate, as opposed to a guy in a windbreaker.
You fit right in, though. And by the way, people are, as I expected, people are freaking out. There's this long list of reactions. Oh my God, what a fantastic image. That is incredible. No way. That's so cool. Of course. And for anybody who's listening to the audio only version of this, I'll throw this picture up on our website so you can go take a look at it at missionlogpodcast.com.
And of course, for me, I get to look back and go, wow, cool. That's what I looked like when I was 17. Cool.
So do you remember, was this toward the end of the run? Is this like third season?
The end of the run. Definitely in third season. There were several times where I visited the set during third season. My recollections are the same as like a lot of people. The thing that I found the most interesting is being around the cast, and them just talking in their normal accents would always throw me off. To have Scotty and Chekhov and stuff, just talking in their normal dialects, and McCoy without the Southern kind of, overlay. And I do remember them having their card games on the side of the set with a little fold out table, so those kind of general memories stuck with me. But the biggest memory was going over one day, or actually it was several days in a row, and it was during Turnabout Intruder. All we knew is that was the title of the episode. And then there was a big, and then at wrap, there was a big party for the end of the week, and so I got to attend the wrap luncheon party, whatever you want to call it, for Turnabout Intruder, and shared sandwiches, and just kind of hung out on the periphery, not wanting to like be too much, be too much of a presence, as it were. And of course not realizing that what I was attending was the wrap party for the entire series.
You went to the wrap party for the entire series, Bob. This is, yeah.
We didn't, I mean, nobody was talking about it in those terms, but that's what it turned, but Turnabout being the last episode, that was that. But yeah, I happened to be there for the party, the weekly wrap party for that episode.
Do you have any sense what, I mean, it's all these people who have worked together. What do they make of a 17-year-old interloper who's just hanging out?
It just kind of, it's somebody hanging out, but there wasn't a lot of presence of fans in those days. Where it was it's like you could be in those days, you could be that young, kind of hang out on the sidelines, and people would figure you were a relative of somebody on the set, or perhaps somebody next door, on the next set. And there wasn't much made of it. And there just wasn't much made of it. But you didn't want to make, and at the same time, you didn't want to make a pest of, a pest of yourself and kind of bring attention to the fact that you're not really supposed to be there. You stand around as well as you can, appearing to be part of, supposedly supposed to be there. It was okay. It was okay on the other sets, or the sets that I had my specific contacts. And on Trek, it just happened to be a place next door that I was visiting, and I certainly didn't want to make a big deal out of it. To me, again, I didn't have any trouble being kind of, blend into the background on Trek or any of the other shows, because I was a big Man From U.N.C.L.E. fan. That was my visits to the Uncle set was, that's where I got really nervous, because that's where I really wanted to talk to everybody and find out what was going on and, nose around in everything and get people to show me stuff. Whereas on Star Trek or, Star Trek or Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea or Wild Wild West, you could kind of hang back a little and just kind of soak it in without wanting to peel the layers back too much.
669-900-6833 is the phone number to call, 669-900-6833, or you can use the one tap from your smartphone, or if you're on Facebook, do all the stuff that's right there on the screen. There's even a thing going by saying what the Zoom meeting code is. So really, the only thing standing between you and talking to us and our guest, Robert Short, is it's you, isn't it? Hey, I got a couple of questions, actually. So 17, you're hanging out on set. You're talking to different people on different productions as well. Did you want to be on set because you always wanted to work in entertainment, or did you end up wanting to work in entertainment because you were following your sister on her acting gigs and you thought, hey, this doesn't look bad?
No, I always wanted to be in film. I always wanted to work in film. That was a deep-seated love and goal from the get-go. Being a monster kid in the 60s, I was enamored with the Universal monsters and other other monsters and stuff. And I was like, I want to make stuff like that. I want to make monster movies. I want to be in them. I always liked my favorite of the monsters was the Wolfman because of his athleticism. So I kind of thought maybe stunt work, and so it became this kind of combination of, I'd like to get into films and doing stunt work and makeup and maybe find my way, my way through that. And then the James Bond films happened and Man From U.N.C.L.E. And then I was like, wow, this action adventure stuff is just as cool as the monsters. And then it became, it really did become a lifelong goal of, what I want to do is make movies, be in the entertainment business. And so that was always set. And so I really appreciated my time on set as a kid.
So then help me with the timeline if you can, because it's season 3 of TOS, and you're hanging out on set and you're about 17 years old.
Yeah,
I want to say the animated series started 5 years later. So you're only 21, 22. How did you end up working on the animated series?
Well, ironically enough, what happened is that a friend of mine, whose father had a plastics company, used to provide the plastic for making the cells. And so I was like, oh, your dad does what? Do you think they might have a job? Or, I was just looking, so I was looking as a kid for a job, part-time job, just a job. And so I got introduced to a fellow by the name of Rocky, who was like one of the plant managers, through my friend, whose dad had the contact with supplying them with the plastic. And I ended up, they ended up offering me a job in ink and paint. Now, traditionally, if you know anything about animation, guys don't do ink and paint. It's like it's a 99% woman's like domain in animation. And certainly all that stuff has been scrambled and is different now. And they almost offered me the ink and paint job as almost like a joke. Like, offer him ink and paint, he's not going to take it. There aren't any guys who do ink and paint. And I was like, no, this sounds really cool. I'll take it on for a challenge. And so I ended up hiring on in the ink and paint department. But because I had always kind of sculpted on my own, just kind of doing goofy little projects and stuff, there was this character called Eric's in the show that I was really fond of. And I did some sculptures of Eric's, and then I was talking to the animators who were in the upstairs level. We were in the downstairs. And they were so impressed with the Eric's sculpture, they had me specifically do one that was like a study model for them, because Eric's with the 3 arms and his particular facial features was driving them a little bit nuts. So I ended up doing this sculpture that the animators used upstairs to kind of, get them, to use as reference.
Well, here's a question I don't think any of us thought was going to come up today. What did you think of the Eric's Christmas ornament that came out last year?
I got a kick out of that. I thought that was great, but I'm more of a Moress kind of fan myself.
Yeah, aren't we all? Well, so just going back real quick, you weren't a huge Star Trek fan. You were into the Irwin Allen shows and Uncle, but now Star Trek shows up again in your life because in the animated series. Did that spark any sort of interest in going back and looking at, was by then obviously in syndication? Do you check out the shows again? Did it
between the original series and by the time I went into Filmation, I had started going to I'd started going to fan kind of things like Losfus and fanish picnics and stuff, and started going, and then somehow or another got roped into doing cosplay as Captain Kirk with a friend who was always coming to the picnics as Spock. And so we got to do entertainment stuff, and I got to do his makeup on the ears. And so then started watching the old episode, doing research and stuff. And then the interest in Star Trek just kind of, I think my interest in Star Trek just kind of started growing because of my fan connections more than anything else. Because it was an odd 70s, early 70s, an odd time, because Star Trek was kind of a dead entity, as was most shows that had been canceled.
Sure.
There wasn't a big collector community. There wasn't a big, there wasn't a lot of talk about bringing old series back. It was really a time of dormancy for pretty much all those, shows. And then the tides changed.
Go ahead, Ken.
Go ahead. Well, no, I was going to do the numbers again, and then, let me do that. 669-900-6833 is the phone number to call. 669-900-6833. Or you can use the one tap from your smartphone, or if you're on the Facebook page, facebook.com/missionlogpod, follow the directions there, and you can be right on with us. John, if you have a question that is tied to what we were just talking about, you should do that, because after the bottom of the hour, I'm going to go in a completely different direction on you.
Okay, cool. Very quickly, did you work in ink and paint on both seasons of the animated series? Were you around for most of the time of the production on that show?
I believe so. I mean, yeah, it's the season that I remember the best is, I'll say this, the season that I remember the best is the first season.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't remember whether I was around for the next go around.
Just curious, one of our listeners asked if you worked specifically on the Magics of Megas 2, but if you're around, we just have to assume that at some point you were involved in all of it.
I'm
just
one of those,
cells are
it's funny
cranking out.
I'm one of those people that if you rattled, I'm like one of those typical people that worked on a show where people ask, what did you think of episode such and such? And I go, I don't remember the title.
No idea. Yeah.
You know, it's like, for me, it's very scattered. It's a very scattered memory of things like, I remember being in the ink and paint department when the Kazin were first introduced. And we were like, what the hell are you asking us to do? You've got us painting these things pink. This must be a mistake. Those are the things that I remember. It's like, we were like, okay, we're doing the chameleon thing, the octopus kind of guy. It's like really cool color combinations. And then the Kazin come in and we were like, you've got to be kidding. Please tell us that you have made a mistake on the color call out on these characters.
That's
can't
funny.
Possibly be, but then you hold your tongue and go, okay, give me another pink cat. Give me another pink cat.
Well, Megas 2 was right in the middle of season 1, and that's where you have Lucian, half man, half goat. He's the devil.
Oh,
and,
right.
Right. Yeah. So there you go.
It's like, I know the characters, I know the designs.
Sure.
When I have to put them to an episode, I'm like,
Right. All right. So, Ken, you're going to take us in another direction.
Well, no, because we got the thing to do at the bottom of the hour. So you're going to take us in another direction. Then I'm going to take us in a completely different direction. But before either of those, I'll do it one more time.
Okay.
669-900-6833 is the phone number to call, 669-900-6833, or use the one tap from your smartphone, or all the information that's on the Facebook page, facebook.com/missionlogpod. And now, Mr. Champion, I think you have something to do.
Yes, I do. So I am so happy to let our audience know. Get this. We are $176 from our goal doing our fundraising for Scott Palm and the heroic curriculum. Now, you've heard me talk about this every week for a few months, and we are so close. I can feel it. I can taste it. We mentioned that the women at Warp really contributed the $500 donation. Then Bruce, who we don't know, jumped in with a $250 donation. Ken, you did a shout out on macOS Ken the other day, and that really brought people out as well. People maybe hadn't heard the message in a while. So for those of you who don't know, Scott Palm, he was our friend who is in the chat room right now. I saw him saying hi. I saw others saying hi to Scott. So say hi to Scott Palm. He's in there right now chatting with you. The heroic curriculum, which he developed in conjunction with Chase Masterson's Pop Culture Hero Coalition, is a curriculum designed to go into schools to reach two groups of kids. The first group is all about teaching kids who have serious physical disabilities, important values like resilience, healthy identity, breaking barriers, and other crucial mental health and life skills. The other group that he's trying to reach are the peers of those children with disabilities, teaching them values like inclusion, ending marginalization, and being an ally. Now, I'm so glad it's the beginning of September. The school year is starting or has started in a lot of different places. October coming up is Bullying Prevention Month, so our timing could not be better. And we are so close to reaching that first goal. Now, this is important work to be done, and it is not the easiest work due to Scott's cerebral palsy, which is why the Roddenberry Foundation is joining with you to help Scott help the world. Now, if you go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/missionlogpod, or if you go to our Twitter page, twitter.com/missionlogpod, you will see a link pinned at the top of the page for the fundraiser. Every dollar that you give will be matched by the Roddenberry Foundation. So you'll be contributing to something that truly embraces the values of Star Trek put into action. Remember, every dollar is doubled by the Roddenberry Foundation. So go to facebook.com/missionlogpod, look for that post at the top of the page, make a donation. Even if you can't donate, just share the post, make other people aware of it. Look, my goal is to make sure that we not only hit, but we exceed our goal. And then the Roddenberry Foundation is going to keep doubling your dollar, no matter how high we get that funding raised for Scott. So we appreciate it. We know that Scott will appreciate it. And you will be helping us make the world a better place.
669-900-6833 is the phone number to call. 669-900-6833, or you can use the one tap from your smartphone, or follow the instructions on our Facebook page, facebook.com/missionlogpod. I said I was going to take us in a completely different direction because I know John. John can talk about Man from U.N.C.L.E. all day long. John can talk about 60s and 70s television all day long. I would hate it if we did not talk about Beetlejuice, because Beetlejuice was just an amazing film to me. It just like, the comedy, not horror exactly, but horror in a way. And what's interesting is to hear that you actually won an Academy Award tied to the makeup on that. And what's weird is I can't quite figure out when I'm thinking about Beetlejuice where the makeup work ends and the effects begin. Things like when Beetlejuice becomes the I can't think of the name of it, but the game basically.
The carnival game. Yeah.
Yes, the carnival game. When Beetlejuice becomes the carnival game, or when they're standing there saying, "How's this for scary?" And then you see the back, the shot of the back of Beetlejuice's head, and you see his face kind of explode out, but you're seeing it from behind. Talk to me first of all about specifically the work you did on there, where that line is, and then just anything else you want to say about really Tim Burton's first real movie, the first Tim Burton movie, because he'd done Pee-wee's Big Adventure and a couple of other things before that. But just if you could give me all that on that, and then I'll let John ask any question he wants about Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Well, gosh, I wish I knew what to say. No, I was responsible for the creature effects on the film, which is the makeup effects, which means that it was my responsibility to come up for the how to create stuff like exactly, ironically enough, exactly what you mentioned. My responsibilities was creating the carousel hat, the unfolding arms, the mallets, that whole look, all the mechanics of that hat, the little creatures on the edge of the hat, coming up with how to do the his face exploding. Mm-hmm. So going down, I can't give you a complete list, but I'm
thinking about things too. Like
the one thing I was not involved with is Beetlejuice's own makeup, which is makeup.
Right.
But beyond that, the rest of it was in my lap, which is Juno's sliced throat when she's smoking, the fly in the graveyard, the shrimps coming out of the bowls attacking people. Again, as I said, the stretch faces of Adam and Barbara, the chattering, the little things like chattering teeth on the floor, the preacher creature, the plate that slams on Barbara's mouth to keep her shut up. The football players, the flattened guy, the smoking dead guy, anybody who was in the afterlife room, the shark on the guys on the diver, the little shrunken head guy. That's all under my auspices.
See, I was gonna ask specifically about that room because there are just so many things that happen in that room. Little things like from the shrunken head to Beetlejuice is sitting next to a lovely pair of legs.
Right.
and the assistant. Right, yeah. and the upper half is on his other side, right? That's just
that's all under my auspices and how that stuff gets done. Yeah, my company was responsible for building all that, and the designs were a combination of Alan Monroe, the visual effects supervisor, Tim Burton, and then my responsibility was to capture exactly the feeling that Tim was after, in regards to the characters. I actually had to do an audition by creating a character based on a maquette that they gave me that I had to replicate exactly and capture the whole tone and feeling and basic emotion of that character, and do a test session and footage and stuff. And that went well enough where, that's why Tim brought me on. And I had learned that stuff from Don Post Studios, how to recreate stuff, pretty much dead on, the kind of the study of, how to capture the broad strokes of design and bring it through to fruition.
Did you work with him on anything else? Because I mean, anything, well, I don't want to say anything that you see, but I would even say that there are elements in the 2001 Planet of the Apes. I mean, there is a design language with which Tim Burton works, or in which Tim Burton plays. I mean, there's no mistaking. I mean, even Batman Returns, I think is fairly close to Beetlejuice.
Yeah, it's fairly identifiable, as far as Tim's basic, his basic tool set regarding his designs and stuff. And Beetlejuice was the only thing that I worked with Tim on. But Tim himself, everybody works from Tim's own sketches, and they can be very rough sketches, but there is a certain sensibility to them that everybody tries to follow and stay in line with. There's stuff in his early work that kind of precedes Beetlejuice. You can kind of see that design element happening, and then stuff in Beetlejuice then goes on to affect and influence other projects as well. I always got a kick out of the fact that if you look very closely on the top of the carousel hat that Beetlejuice is wearing when he comes out of the graveyard, if you catch the ornament on the top of the hat, it's pretty much Jack Skellington's head. So, that's kind of where Jack Skellington starts.
Right. That's a tremendous amount of fun. I had, thank you. John, please, now any 70s or 60s or 70s TV questions. The floor is yours.
No, actually, I mean, look, we could do 6 hours on Man from U.N.C.L.E, and that would just be getting warmed up.
I bore everybody to death.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I did.
Man from what?
Right. And I had the great privilege and pleasure earlier today to go through a VR simulation of U.N.C.L.E headquarters created by Robert in a VR platform called Rec Room. It is not yet ready for prime time. This was kind of a preview thing, but I'm here to tell you it was just stunning. It was like walking into the TV show, and that's what you want when you have a VR experience. So that is yet to come, and maybe we'll get back to an U.N.C.L.E story or two. But knowing our audience, I do want to take it back to Star Trek for just a minute, because you had a couple of other experiences that I want to hit on that we just mentioned in passing. The Don Post Studios. So at this time, you're talking about this fallow mid-70s period where Star Trek is in syndication. There's a lot of fan interest, but look, it's not back on the air. The movie is still a ways away in 79, but you have this opportunity. Again, I want to know how you made this connection, how this job landed in your lap, where you did this design and sculpts for what became those Don Post 70s full head masks. You got the Megatu, you got the Gorn, you've got Shatner later to become Michael Myers, and then you've got Nimoy as Spock. Give us the nutshell version on those.
Don't forget our salt vampire.
And the salt vampire, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was at a time where, doing licensing on Star Trek was almost non-existent. As far as licensing from the TV show, as far as major products. And Bill Malone, who is the manager, the lab manager at Don Post Studios, and myself, we were Star Trek fans at that point. We were familiar with the show, and we were looking for properties that were really kind of outliers that we just really liked. And and thought that if we basically said, if we like this stuff, there's got to be fans out there that also like this stuff. But there wasn't a pre-built audience that you could point to and say, no, yeah, no problem. So we were doing licensing deals with several of the studios in town. And I don't remember where our contact was regarding Paramount at the time, but we had a lot of discussions about, how about we try Star Trek? It does have a fan base, and I think we can tap into that. So we did go to Paramount and ask for a license, and they were kind of like dumbstruck, kind of like, you want what? You want to do, huh? And and then our retailers were were definitely on the fence as well. They were like, you're going to want to do Star Trek. How are we going to sell that? So there were all kinds of hurdles, not major ones, but we just wanted to take a shot at it because we were doing things like, hey, the Hammer films we like the Hammer films. Let's try and do a Christopher Lee Dracula. Let's do a Barnabas Collins from Dark Shadows. We're going to do Planet of the Apes. There's like this quote unquote subculture here that we can tap into. And we just went for it. And we didn't have any, and the irony is that we didn't have any tapes, and we weren't following Star Trek on syndication, and those were, whatever syndication was on at the time was very hit and miss. You couldn't just run the entire series and like look at what was good to choose from and what would be the best and all this stuff. So we literally just went with what we remembered, with our gut. We were like, well, I remember the gorilla kind of character, the Mugatu, and yeah, the salt vampire was really cool, and the Gorn, everybody loves the Gorn. So those were obvious. And then the really head scratchers, even for even for the people at Don Post, was how are we going to sell a Shatner and how are we going to sell a Captain Kirk and a Spock mask? They're just people. But we were like, no, you got to have Spock and Kirk. And we got life masks on both of them that were provided to us, and I don't remember whether they came from Paramount or elsewhere. And no, we were kind of like crusaders. We were just like, we just want this. We just want to try and get license on this stuff because we like it. We just figured if we like it, somebody else is going to like it. And so we just went for it. So I did out of that grouping, Bill Malone did Spock and he did Kirk, and I did the Mugatu and the Salt Vampire, and we did get an actual casting off of the Gorn head. So that was dead on. So that one was dead on. We didn't have to do much work other than be very careful about the mold making around the eyes, because all of those being rhinestones on the original head.
So can I ask really quickly, are you aware of how Shatner becomes the serial killer mask from Halloween?
Yeah, and it wasn't a grudge with Shatner or anything else. It was just simply the Halloween crew came in asking the Don Post staff to come up with a very bland, almost no detail kind of generic head shape that they wanted painted white. It was like they just wanted something that was just a blank, is the best way to describe it. And we thought about, Bill and I thought about, okay, what have we got that's the most bland humanoid stuff that we've got in stock? Well, it's not going to be the Emmett Kelly clown, and it's not going to be the devil with the horns, and it's not going to be Barnabas Collins, that's an old vampire. and Christopher Lee is not going to cut it with his fangs. All we had was Shatner and Nimoy, and we debated whether or not it would be Shatner or Nimoy. And we thought about Nimoy for a moment because he's had a much more kind of alien, kind of more distinctive face. But we figured we don't want to take the time to like rework the ears. And so literally Shatner won out by default, and the eyes were too small on the Shatner mask. So Bill cut the eyes out larger so that somebody would be able to see out of them. And then then Bill cut the sideburns off because the pointed sideburns were a little too obvious. And we spent so little on making the very first mask for Halloween that we didn't even want to change. We didn't even want to put new hair on the mask. It was a secondary mask that wasn't going to be going out because it was damaged a bit. And so to change the hair color, Bill just sprayed the hair black on the surface. He left the brown Shatner hair on it and just sprayed a top coat on it. And that was the beginning of the shape, Michael Myers from Halloween. And we didn't have any, in all honesty, we didn't have any faith in it. We were just like, okay, this is the goofiest request we've ever had to fill. Okay, there you go, out the door with the white mask. Thanks, guys. And then it became a classic. And even by today's standards, it's still such a standard and so iconic. But at the time, we were like, really? What are we doing?
It's kind of
doing here.
It's kind of the opposite end of what you were saying about the Beetlejuice stuff, because everything is like, so exacting, and there's this design language, and then you've got this thing. It's like, well, that looks pretty horrific. Let's just go ahead and see what happens there. Hey, really quickly.
So that's how it happened. So it was just happenstance that Shatner won out as the mask, and we never talked about. I mean, and ironically, and as you know, nobody ever talked about it being Shatner. We just did it as this is the most bland thing we've got, and then it became like an urban legend that it was Shatner. And it took so many years for people to actually be convinced that it was now it wasn't a Shatner mask; it was a Captain Kirk mask.
Right.
Exactly.
Which I mean, seriously does make all the difference with him, I would imagine. 669-900-6833 is the phone number to call, 669-900-6833, or you can use the one tap from your smartphone, or, feel free to tap through all the stuff on Facebook and come to us that way. We've got about 10 more minutes with Robert, maybe a little bit less than that. Really quickly, this is the point of the show where we want to remind you about a whole bunch of other shows on the Roddenberry Podcast Network. These are shows like Women at Warp, Priority One, Daily Star Trek News, Shabam, and of course Mission Log, which ties in nicely with Mission Log Live, and saving the Trek Files to last this week because there's a very special episode of the Trek Files, which makes it sound like something from network television. A very special episode of the Trek Files this week. John, I was actually in the room when it was made, but you've heard it more recently. Remind people what's on this week's show.
Yeah, so funny thing that you were in the room while I was standing outside the room trying to get in. But
I got there on time. That's really all it was.
Oh, okay, we're going there. So you were fortunate enough to be in the room when Larry was interviewing Robert Butler, the man who directed The Cage. Yes, 55 years ago, when cameras rolled on the first pilot of Star Trek, The Cage, Robert Butler was there. He's the man who called action on the first frame of Star Trek. So 91 years old, he came down to San Diego to sit with Larry, have a conversation, and it goes everywhere. It's about casting that show. It's about what I found really fascinating, just how green Gene Roddenberry was at the time. They'd only worked together a little bit on Lieutenant. Gene's still finding his way in the business. And it's just such a fascinating slice of production in 1964. And Robert has great stories and a great sense of humor. So please check that out on the Trek Files this week. It is a very special episode. It's a supplemental edition of the Trek Files before we get back into the regular season. And you can find that at podcast.roddenberry.com and at podcast.roddenberry.com and facebook.com/the Trek Files.
Well, I thought you were actually doing the thing because you can actually find it at podcast.roddenberry.com or podcasts if you're feeling more plural.
All of them.
Yeah, you can house all of the Roddenberry Podcast Network podcasts at one place, or two, podcasts.roddenberry.com.
Hey, since we are running up a little bit against the clock here, I do want to fast forward a little bit, Robert, and talk to you about Star Trek: The Motion Picture. So you had this experience on the animated series, and you're working for Don Post Studios. And then at some point, you find yourself doing effects on the motion picture. And now that movie has such a bizarre story about an effects house being hired and fired and moving over, and they're running up against to the very last minute delivering wet prints for the premiere. What did you do on that show?
I worked with Greg Jean, the miniature, the fellow who was in charge of the miniatures during that second tier of visual effects. I was working as kind of Greg's assistant and model maker in general on the show. And what I specifically spent many a sleepless night working on was mainly with Greg the interior of Voyager. The area that the Enterprise goes into, the very first part with the big globes and kind of those V shapes, and where Spock does his spacewalk, where he leaves the ship. So I was involved in building the interior of Voyager, which was huge. You could walk around inside of it. It was so big. Or sleep in it, depending on how late we were working, because we definitely slept nights to, just kind of, again, in reference to that, the dripping wet prints. A lot of the spacewalk was given to me as far as what had to be done. A lot of what's in the spacewalk is stuff that I personally built: moons, planets, lava planets, things going by. Moons, what we commonly refer to as this weird spaceship lip type thing that he goes through. But a good portion of Spock's spacewalk was the stuff that I was involved in, as far as making all those elements that he sees during the walk. So it's Voyager and Spock's spacewalk, and then a bit of the connective tissue. I remember us working late nights, making little tiny hexagonal platformy things that reached from Voyager to the side of the Enterprise dish. So we had to create that bridge that segues from Voyager to the Enterprise.
Oh, see, this is good to know, because I sort of want the entrance to my house to look like that. So I should talk to you.
Talk to me at some time.
Yeah.
But I was around during, for the, I didn't directly work on the Enterprise itself or the space dock, but I was around for the shots where we were doing the Enterprise in the space dock. And shots like that, the little Spock figures, the not Spock figure, but the little figures that are on the grid of the docking structure and stuff. Actively built the Voyager spacewalk, and then was around for a lot of the other stuff. I always think of very fond terms, being in the I'd attend the daily sessions when we did have screenings of the effects for Robert Wise and Richard Edlin and crew always used to play heavy duty rock music for all the Enterprise shots as they go by. So unfortunately, whenever I think of Star Trek, the motion picture, I think of it with a really heavy rock score. Though I love Jerry Goldsmith's music for Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Well, they did leave in that one heavy metal bass note
the blaster beam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The very
Nice.
beginning.
Robert, this has been too much fun, and we didn't talk about Uncle at all. So
I know.
clearly, we have to have you back on. Just me and you. We'll do about 6 hours, and it'll be great.
Absolutely. And thanks for coming by today and walking through Uncle headquarters.
Oh, it was that was mind blowing. I cannot wait to do it again. Before we say goodnight, I have some great news. I just got word from Earl, and then I looked at the screen, and we hit the fundraising goal, guys. We're over $6,000 raised for Scott. That gets matched by the Roddenberry Foundation. Let's not stop there. Let's drain the coffers a little bit more. I'm going to leave up the fundraiser for just a little while longer, just maybe like a week, and then that'll be it. But I cannot wait to get a big fat check from the foundation sent off to Scott. And then I tell you what, let's check in with him. Let's check in with Chase. Let's find out how things are going to get this curriculum out into schools. I cannot thank you all enough. This has been near and dear to me, and I know to Ken and to Chase and everybody they hear from. And Scott, we absolutely love you. This is a great way to end tonight's show. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to our special guest, Robert Short, who I certainly hope we will have back again. Excellent. Cheers, everybody.
Mission Log Live is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Executive producer Rod Roddenberry. Technical production on Mission Log Live by Earl Green. As I said before, be sure to visit podcast.roddenberry.com for all of the podcasts on the Roddenberry Podcast Network, including this week's special edition of the Trek Files. Really, just a fantastic show. You don't want to miss it. If you'd like to support Mission Log directly, that'd be neat. Patreon.com/missionlog is the place to do that. Thanks to everybody who joined us live or later, and we will talk to you next week.